Come on in, welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about what the heck happened to the Survivor auction. Introduced in the show's second season, the auction was a lighthearted reprieve from the game in which players get to bid a set amount of money, typically $500, on food, game advantages, and sometimes even hidden duds. Originally intended as a silly reward challenge chock full of little character moments, the auction evolved over the years from a humble Doritos and Mountain Dew commercial in its inaugural season to a bona fide Survivor institution, making appearances every few years in what is almost always a highlight of the season. It's a fun detour from the game and allows us to see the personalities of the players more fully as they bid big or get outbid for their favorite meals.
420. 420, the magic number.
Used to be, you could set your watch by the auction's appearance every few seasons. It's an absolute crowd pleaser, and I've never met any Survivor fan who doesn't at least like it. And even if you said you didn't like it, I wouldn't believe you. It's one of three things that literally all Survivor fans agree is awesome, along with Cirie Fields and those times when Jeff gets sassy.
Jonathan getting frustrated by me.
So if every Survivor fan loves the auction, why hasn't it been on the show since 2015? Well, let's find out. Today, I thought it'd be fun to give a brief overview of the Survivor auction, from clunky beginnings in Season 2 where they offered just 6 french fries and way too much ranch, to the decadent platters of food in later years. I'll go over when and how game advantages started entering the mix, and finally, how a cast of superfans metagamed the auction to death, causing the downfall of one of Survivor's most universally beloved institutions. All that said, let's get a fat dip of Survivor auction history.
Get a fat dip of that guac.
The Survivor auction first appeared in episode 11 of Survivor Australia, fittingly titled, Let's Make a Deal. While it's a big hit from the start, and I'll say it, just about the only entertaining thing to happen this season after Jerry leaves, it's abundantly clear that the auction is going to go through some growing pains. For one, the offerings are a little weak. Just about everything here is underwhelming. 4 tortilla chips, 6 french fries, a glass of Mountain Dew? Ugh, I'll take a crab juice. There are a few classic auction items that are worth playing for and worth paying for though. Roger buys a cheeseburger, and Elizabeth buys some peanut butter and chocolate. But for the most part, the offerings are a little lackluster, making the inaugural auction one of the less watchable in the show's history. Wow, lucky Elizabeth. In just a few seasons, that peanut butter and chocolate would have cost you your top. They did institute an auction staple in this very first auction, however, the mysterious covered item, which is sometimes junk and sometimes gold. All in all, the first auction was an inspired idea, but the producers wisely realized half the fun of the auction is playing along at home, and it's much more entertaining to watch the survivors bid on actual meals rather than crackers. Enter the second auction in the show's history, important historically because it's where the auction really cemented itself as an institution. The show in the first 4 seasons especially was finding its footing, experimenting with different things to see what works and what doesn't work. It's notable then that this is something actually carried over from one season to the next. They knew they had something good on their hands, it just needed a little finesse. They course-corrected perfectly here. In the Survivor Africa auction, the food is actually worth playing for. It's an iconic moment at the end of the season that really cemented the auction as a must-have every few seasons, when Big Tom and Ethan go halvesies on a covered meal, which turns out to be a gigantic breakfast platter. Ah yes, a meal that can evenly be split between the two of them without any issue whatsoever.
Ham, and he's a Jew and he won't eat the ham. He's a Jew.
Easily one of the most memorable and iconic moments of this season. I genuinely think we can thank Big Tom, half blasted off a beer he bought earlier, celebrating his extra slices of bacon, for ensuring that the auction would be here for years to come. Following Big Tom's big celebration, the auction appeared every few seasons. In Survivor Amazon, for the first time, letters from home are offered as the final item of the auction, which would eventually come to be its own mini tradition within the auction itself. Save some cash and you have a chance to buy some love at the end. Not only did this bring the high emotions obviously associated with hearing from your family after 30 days of no contact, it also brought the drama. Both Christy and Jenna felt entitled to their letters and entered into a prolonged and bitter bidding war for them. Now, I know what you're thinking. These two, entitled? No way. But it's true. They are. The next two auction appearances in Survivor Palau and Survivor Guatemala officially set the template that Love from Home would typically be the auction closer, and slowly but surely, savvy players would begin abstaining from bidding on food in order to buy some love. Jeff really unwittingly opened Pandora's box when he allowed Jenna to buy her letter after Christy outbid her. And in Palau and Beyond, survivors would have the expectation that letters from home would be available to all at whatever the max bid was. Guatemala also has another important change to the auction format, which, for a season that is largely forgotten by fans, it sure has a lot of firsts. First time an advantage was offered in an auction, first immunity idol, first returning player tribe captains, first landscaper. In Guatemala, an advantage in the next immunity challenge is offered, a change to the format which would slowly decay the auction over the next 20 seasons. Danny buys this advantage, but is forbidden from opening it until the next immunity challenge. Jeff even points out the wax seal on the envelope. You've got to respect a wax seal. It's like a do not enter sign, but for letters. It's wild to me that a majority alliance whose only goal is getting out this woman just allows her to buy an advantage in the next immunity challenge for $200. In future seasons, majority alliances would almost always have at least one person dedicated to trying to snipe any advantages out of the minority alliance's hands. After Guatemala, we've officially created the auction as we know and love it today. The next several auctions followed its template, each mixing in either an advantage in the next immunity challenge, or, starting with Survivor Cook Islands, the ability to send someone to Exile Island and take all their money, which is my personal favorite auction advantage. Wonder who Becky's gonna send to Exile Island. Well, Candace, I know Exile is your home away from home. As the auction format got set in stone, casts got wise to the format. As we make our way into the late teens and early 20s, players in Danny's position as the de facto next boot would abstain from bidding completely and go all in the second Jeff said advantage, whether that's for an idol clue or an advantage in the next immunity challenge. Corinne did this first in Survivor Gabon, but Jason and Abby Maria both also spent their full 500, and Troyzan and Malcolm both spent darn near. By the mid-20s, we've reached an era where at least one or two players each auction were sitting out of the bidding, waiting for Jeff to say that magic word. When there is more than one advantage holdout, everyone who bids the max amount on an advantage now draws rocks to see who wins the advantage. From a producer's point of view, that's a problem, especially since the auctions are typically held around Final 7 or Final 8. Having 20% of your cast acting as essentially set decoration, even for a little bit, is not great. There are two auctions in particular that broke the auction, leading to its abolishment forever. The first is in Season 28, Survivor Cagayan. This auction was a buyer's market. Because Tony, Spencer, and Tasha were all holding out for an advantage, Wu, Cass, Trish, and Jeffra scored some of the best deals in auction history. Jeffra buys a quesadilla, guac, and a margarita for $100. Wu gets some ribs and beer for $40. And Cass drops a measly $20 on a steak sandwich. These are all items that easily would have gone for $300 or $400 just a few years prior. And yet, here Trish is, dropping only $80 on popcorn and a soda. That's like the real-world value of a popcorn and soda at your local theater. Now, this is still a wildly entertaining auction because Spencer's constant cope at having to sit out eating all this great food just to drop his full $500 on the chance to win an advantage he doesn't even get is hilarious. But it's more than a little frustrating having 3 of the stars of the season sitting idly by, holding out to bid their full $500 just for the chance to win an advantage. It's clearer than ever that the auction is in desperate need of a rework. The auction is officially broken in its next appearance 2 seasons later during Survivor Worlds Apart. Things start off normal enough. Jen buys a margarita, Sharon buys some chicken and waffles, Will pays $100 to accidentally buy his way out of the auction, which, Survivor, I would have given you way more than that to get Will out of the game. You just had to ask. It's superfan Sharon who uses her Survivor knowledge for evil, instead of good, like me, who helps break the auction forever. She notes that in the past, when letters from home are on the table, Jeff lets everyone buy their letters for whatever the high bid ends up being. She's right, that is generally how things go. So she proposes that one of them just offer the lowest bid possible, $20, and then they can all get their letters for cheap. Now, there is something else going on at this auction as well. Mike, Carolyn, and Dan are all holding out for an advantage, and they all know it. When it turns out that Sharon was right and Jeff will indeed allow them to buy their letters for $20, the 3 make a gentleman's agreement to all buy their letters, so they'll all still be on an even playing field cash-wise. But Mike holds out at buying his letter in the last second, trying to game their gaming of the letters so that he'll still have his full $500. Leading to Carolyn trying to give Jeff her letter back like this is the return counter at Target. Now, Mike ultimately relents and buys his letter, but Jeff is quite clearly annoyed that they've turned letters from home into some sort of high-stakes, obnoxious metagaming. The auction hasn't been back since. Jeff said it best all the way back in the Amazon. The auction is supposed to be fun. This isn't fun. As Jeff told Entertainment Weekly, quote, "I felt the Survivor auction was broken. It had become about one thing, getting an advantage. Well, sure seems like it's not coming back because it's officially been broken. But there are ways it could recapture that old auction magic. I personally don't think it would be enough to just tell players that there aren't any letters or advantages. You'd still have holdouts believing that Jeff is lying to them. And I think Survivor wants the possibility of finding advantages at every turn anyway. That's why they're often hidden at reward challenges. So why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone by hiding advantages in the auction winnings? Hide an advantage in someone's food, in the shower, heck, even the dud item. That way, you still get an advantage or clue in the game, but it's random. Imagine someone trying to savvily slip a spaghetti sauce covered idol clue into their pocket or something. Australian Survivor did this very thing, and it worked out great. You could also have everyone start with different amounts of money. Some sort of challenge conducted in private beforehand could determine the amount of money each player has, and advantage waiters can't just jump to the max bid the second Jeff pulls out his little magic scroll. So that's what happened to the auction. Survivor superfans gamed it to death. And what was once a lighthearted reward challenge full of great character moments that was never meant to be taken seriously turned into yet another part of the high-level metagame, which is frustrating. It's like trying to play competitive Mario Kart or something. Like, what are you doing? Do you see how ridiculous you look? This is a party game for children. Fuck you! And your Waluigi Wiggler mobile. Got nothing else for ya. To help me get a fat dip of those views, like and subscribe, and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.